Is it dangerous in Ukraine now? Will Russia attack? Those are the two questions that it seems like we are being asked a lot. And I want to thank you for all of those who have written or reached out to us in some way to ask us about what's going on here. Are we staying in Ukraine? Are we leaving? And I hope that in this video I can answer those questions for you. And I want to share with you really the things that worry us most, those things that really cause us to even lose sleep at night sometimes. But first of all, I do want you to know that we feel that we are safe here. We are in Odessa, Ukraine right now. It is calm, it is peaceful, there is no signs of any kind of violence or anything like that. So if you're worried about our immediate well-being, we're doing just fine, except for one fact. It looks like we all have COVID, and so that kind of is, I guess, worrying us right now a little bit. But this weekend, my wife Christina got sick. She got tested this weekend. She tested positive, and then we all got this thing in the throat, headache, congestion, feeling tired. I'm just kind of trying to come out of it now. For sure, Friday, Saturday is pretty sick. Today, still feeling it a little bit, and I hope I'll be out of it within another day or two. I got tested today, haven't gotten the results back, but most likely I have COVID. So that's just one factor in all of this. We all have COVID right now, most likely. My wife does for sure, which means we're probably not going to be able to go anywhere if we have to go anywhere. But honestly, we don't feel like we need to go anywhere. So, what is the situation? I know it's been all over the news, and there's a couple of factors, a couple of things that I think are helpful to think about here. First of all, for you who are not in Ukraine, I know that when you're seeing the news about Ukraine, all you see is Russia on the borders, more troops here, more artillery there, and it looks scary. For us that are living here, what do we see in our daily life? We see traffic, we see work, we see all the regular things, going to the store, paying the bills. Nothing has changed in our daily life here, except for maybe one thing. The currency, the Ukrainian hryvnia, has dropped in value because of all the hype in the news media. So it's dropped a little bit in value. It went from about 26 or 27 Ukrainian hryvnia to $1 to about 28, creeping up on 29 now. And so that is the main worry, I think, for a lot of the people right now. But other than that, everything, life is as usual. And I just want you to know that, because if you're not here and you don't see that, it can be easy to think that, oh no, everything is scary, everything is dangerous, and it's not. Now, that fact of how life is here now is very different than it was in 2014 and 2015. So when we think about the situation, I often compare it to what it was like in 2014 and 2015, because in 2014 and 15, even here in Odessa, we had violence, we had bombings, we had killings. We had a day in May when over 50 people were burned alive, and most of that happened while our co-workers and while we were here in Odessa, and we were fine, and we stayed here. So of course our desire is to stay here and not leave the ministry that God has called us to. But I just want you to know that we do feel very safe. The other thing that I think is helpful to think about is that we have been living with aggression from Russia for the last 8 years, since 2014. And not a lot has changed. Yes, there are more troops in Belarus now, but we've had troops in eastern Ukraine on the border there pretty much for the last 7 to 8 years. So in that sense, we don't feel the huge change. It's just more in the news now. And yes, there are more troops than there has been, but they have been there, and we've been aware of that for the last 7 or 8 years. The other thing that I think that is worth noting here is that in 2014, when Russia came and took Crimea from southern Ukraine, then they came in and they were able to take a chunk out of eastern Ukraine, that was a time of political chaos in Ukraine. Number one, we didn't have a president. The government was in shambles. There was really no order or control in the government. And that allowed for Russia to come in, take Crimea, and for Ukraine to lose that chunk in eastern Ukraine. Today is a completely different situation. One more factor, actually. In 2014, the army was in a very, very bad state here. The army had very low morale. The tanks and the equipment were not well taken care of. There was not good order in the army, and so there was no one really ready to react. And yet Ukraine did react, and Ukraine did in June, July of 2014 put a stop to the oncoming enemy forces in eastern Ukraine. So now we have a completely different situation. There is a government. There is much more order than there was in 2014. We have a much stronger military than we had in 2014. A much more well-trained military than we had in 2014. And yes, Russian army is far larger than the Ukrainian army, but Russia cannot afford to send all of its army to Ukraine. But Ukraine will send all of its army against enemy forces if they come across the borders of Ukraine. So those are some factors to think about and some of the reasons why we really do feel safe at this time. That being said, we do have a backup plan. We do have some contingency plans if we need to fly out, if we need to drive out. We have some plans to make sure that we are ready to go, that we are ready to shelter in place. We have bought things to help us shelter in place. If electricity goes out, we have backup power. We have water saved, things like that are just probably good to do for anybody really, but or for have those kinds of things in your home in case like you just lose power or something like that. So we do have some contingency plans. That being said, we're not planning to go anywhere right now. Now, I mentioned, what do we really worry about right now? And the honest truth, just really the honest truth, what we worry about is not Russia. What we worry about, what I worry about, what keeps me up at night is the spiritual state of the people that I minister to. It is problems that we're dealing with in individuals' lives. It is people who have come to the Lord and are seeking Him but are not quite there yet. It is people who maybe know the Lord but have turned their back on Him. Those are the things that really keep us up at night, friends. It is the spiritual battle. And I mean, I'm not saying that just like sounds spiritual. I mean, like if you were here, you would know this, because these are the things you don't see in the news. They're not showing what churches are doing. They're not showing the day in and day out life of a pastor or a minister or anything like that. And I wish you could see some of those things, but so many of them are kind of private things. But there are many people that we're working with here, many counseling situations, personal situations, in the church, outside of the church, that cause us a level of concern, and sometimes it's a level of concern that, yeah, it does keep me up at night. But no, the situation with Russia is not keeping me up at night. Thankfully, that is allowing us to sleep. So that's just a real short overview of the situation here. We will try to keep you updated. Hopefully we'll get over this COVID soon. I actually had to stay home from church today, and so did my whole family, so we watched online. But please continue to pray for Ukraine and continue to pray for us here. We thank you so much for your prayers and support.